Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back for another EVE Online video. Today's video is going to be another discussion video because CCP just came out with a dev blog that I think is impossible to ignore. I was going to call it the bombshell, but I think we can almost call it a nuke that CCP dropped on the EVE Online community because they finally bit the bullet and came out with a dev blog explaining that instanced PvP is coming to EVE Online, and I think as a lot of players will have expected, it is going to come through the filament system and of course have a Triglavian team behind it all. A little bit as expected in a way, but of course CCP is also giving us some details on exactly what they're planning to do with the system, because there's always many ways to go. So if you want to follow along, then you can always go to eveonline.com. Of course, you can click on the news link, which brings you here, and we have two items to look at. We have a news item from CCP Convict, and down here we actually have the dev blog proving of Kybernauts for glorification in the flow unfold. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I personally was expecting something like this might be in the works at CCP when they first introduced the proving grounds in the Abyss. I never actually engaged in it because it was pretty high tier filaments that you had to go through. You needed a pretty blingy ship in order to give yourself a chance to find that gate to those proving grounds, but it definitely felt like maybe a first tiny little teaser towards making these filaments different filaments that would just throw you straight into an arena to do PvP against other players. And that's exactly what is coming. It's gonna be a little bit controversial as well. Some people really don't like the idea because the sandbox, of course, is all about uneven situations and adapting to what happens around you with as much freedom as possible. And of course, this instanced PvP does go counter to some of the tenets there. But I personally think that as long as you then lose your ship, lose your pot, lose your implants, and they're all gone, and they can only be created within New Eden by other players, then I think it can still just be an added option that that follows the rules of the sandbox. So let's quickly start here with the news item from CCP Convict. There is a big update coming to the Abyssal Proving Grounds feature in EVE Online. The revamp will be part of EVE Online's third quadrant coming soon in July, so that really is pretty damn soon. And we'll also introduce new proving filaments to New Eden, as expected, right? Different filaments bring you to a different type of arena, and these ones will of course be focused on PvP. Let's see, I'll quickly read through this, it's not that long. The proving filaments will take capsulators from any point in space directly into an abyssal proving ground inside abyssal dead space, where they will engage in player versus player combat. The filaments will be obtainable through abyssal dead space and Triglavian invasion related content, as well as upcoming events. I'm really sure that they'll also be tradable on the market, so eventually I think quite a few players that really like this activity will find themselves in Jita, buy the ships, buy the fits, buy the filament, undock and get in there. Is going to be a part of a playstyle for at least some players, I think. Capsulers will finally be able to test their PvP abilities in specific ship classes with specific combat formats, and there will also be leaderboards. Okay, well, if you're introducing something like this to EVE Online, might as well go all out, show activity of other players, show who's the best. I haven't read about it, but I think there's going to be no matchmaking, something that will eventually start to be needed. Personally, I think so, but we'll see. Of course, this is I'm also seeing this as sort of a testing phase, right? The type of proving filament you get will determine what type of battle you'll be engaging in. So I can imagine that CCP is going to try many different things, see what sticks, see what is popular, see what is too one-sided, what needs tweaking. Let's not see this as a final version of this feature, but rather a first introduction of it. As if that weren't enough, the Abyssal Proving Grounds will have new Triglavian themed settings as well, adding significantly to the atmosphere of these battlegrounds. So we'll get nice arenas to PvP in. Check out the dev blog and on this feature for its functionality. We'll do that in just a moment, but before that I do want to speculate a little bit because I'm not sure if I've made videos about it, but I personally think I did, and that is on the new game that CCP is developing in London as well. We know that it's a game. I think there's a very high chance that it's a shooter, and well, I have to go back to my thoughts on how would you introduce a shooter game into EVE Online that would fit with the narrative. And I've always said there's two ways to go about this. Number one, go massive scale, go planet side and even bigger with construction, production, destruction, and a certain permanence. That would of course be the dream FPS for the EVE Online setting. But if that's too grand a scale, too complex, which I can fully understand, then of course your other option is to go the sport way, the blood sport way. And then all of the lore that was coming out with the Triglavians, with their proving grounds, with their glorification, with prove yourselves to us, prove your worth, survival of the fittest being so central to the Triglavians. And that to me just made a lot of sense, that if you want to have a more structured type of PvP, FPS game, within the EVE Online universe, that something like that would make sense, where you could do 5 versus 5, you could do regular matches, rounds, and things like that. That would not be about being part of the huge universe itself and having huge stakes with conquering planets and having influence on PI, nothing like that. It's rather all about the honor of proving yourself to be the best, which is what those types of FPS games are all about. So this is pure speculation on my end, but this could be all part of CCP's plan for that new game as well. And then let's move on to the dev blog itself. Proving of Cybernauts for glorification in the flow unfolds. I'm not going to read through all of this verbatim, but we may read some decently large sections of it, because of course if they give us some details on the mechanics, that could be very interesting. So for first time ever, the new Abyssal Proving Grounds will be accessible to small groups of Capsuleers fighting against each other in a variety of ship types. So they recap the story, and then I think here they basically give us a little bit of the feedback that they got from players that were actually engaging in the proving grounds as we know them now. And of course, number one, many pilots want the ability to enter the proving grounds directly instead of being required to complete an Abyssal Dead Space run first. Makes a lot of sense to me. It's also pretty high tier, as I've said, and one of the reasons why I never engaged in it. Also, the ship needed to get in there. I think it was noted somewhere else, or maybe it was in like one of the comments or something like that. I was not going to put a several billion ISK ship together just to go to the proving ground and then probably lose it, because I'm really bad at PvP. I would need to be I mean, compare me to like a 1 week rookie when it comes to PvP. I know absolutely nothing, or next to nothing, about it. Certainly not about the nuances, about flying actively and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it basically scared me too much to say I'm gonna risk that type of a ship to try and get some fun in the proving grounds. The meta for the proving grounds has been solved, and I think statistics show that if half the matches are won by a single ship, the Ikitursa, then you do have something that's become a little bit stale. Requests who would like to compete in proving ground style PvP with their friends, so not just 1v1 but other options as well for a solo player like myself. Not really an angle that I thought about too much, but it does make sense. It is still an MMO, and CCP agrees with that, which I think is fine, as long as maybe some 1v1 options exist as well. So expect an answer to that. Finally, we've heard heard from many players that a system for finding opponents could do with some improvements. In the old system, the gate to the proving grounds would spawn when it detects that enough characters were active in the abyss. Players could then choose to enter proving grounds and might wait for significant periods of time for an opponent. It was even possible for them to win by default when no opponent could be found within the time limit. So also something, of course, if you can get more players to join that content, and if it becomes actually just very focused on what they want, the PvP action, you'll get more players, and thus you'll find matches much more easily. Man, we are starting to use language which you would have never really considered with EVE Online. Matches, leaderboards, queues, things like that. But here we are. The new hotness is coming, so starting next month. The old Abyssal Proving Grounds feature will be replaced. Oh, so that one is gone. All right, so it's going to be pure PvE or PvP. New limited time events where Druglavians will invite Capsuleers to enter the Proving Grounds to compete in a variety of formats. To enter the Proving Grounds, you will activate one of the new filaments fully as expected. The format for each Proving Ground event in Q3 2020 will consist of a set of ship types that are able to use the filament to enter the Proving Grounds, as well as a specific fleet size of Capsuleer participants. We're currently planning 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 5v5 and 5-player free-for-all formats. Kind of like that idea. Definitely something that I would dare mess with. If you're unlucky, you're gone first. If you're lucky, you might find yourself in a pretty cool situation. And they'll be mixing and matching ship restrictions and fleet sizes to ensure that each event provides players with a unique PvP experience. That is very interesting, right? My very first thought was just make a filament 1v1 frigates. There you go, guys. Enjoy it. Next filament 2v2 frigates. Up, there we go. Keep going like that. Add in destroyers, cruisers, battleships, whatever you want. And then you've got a massive amount of options and just see what works the best. It looks like CCP is taking a different approach. They're going with very specific types of ships. For instance, July 16th to 20th, oh, and even numbers. July 16th to 26th is going to be 2v2, Take 1 combat, attack, and disruption cruiser suite. Omen, Caracal, Thorax, Stabber, Mauler, Moa, Vexor. Love the Vexor myself. Rupture, Arbitrator, Blackbird, Celestis, and Bellicose. And then the event after that, 31st of July. Oh, only 3 days. 5-player destroyer free for all. So only destroyers, 5v5 free for. I'm definitely gonna try that. That sounds like a lot of fun. Complete chaos, and it might not show so much that I'm that bad at PvP there. After that, we've got another small one planned for a Mar Foundation Day special, 3 versus 3 Imperial. Ooh, 1 ship in 3 versus 3. I kinda like that idea as well. And then we can also share a preliminary schedule for the rest of Proving Grounds events in Quadrant 3. So there's going to be more of them all the way up until October. They already have plans in motions for those. Very interesting. The filaments will follow a simpler process than the old Proving Ground mechanic. They're a unique filament for each event. When activated, will launch a Capsuleer and his fleet into the Proving Ground, just like an Abyssal Filament launches a player into Abyssal Dead Space. Will be obtainable through several different methods. Okay, I'm not that worried about it. I'm gonna assume that you can still sell it and buy it on the markets. There we go, can be sold on the markets. So if you just want to focus on pure PvP, you'll be able to obtain them there. Each will have start and end date for its event. Okay, all right. So definitely feels like a more timid first step, and that they're still feeling out the situation and how the player base will react to it, because they're definitely not saying, there we go, this is now a permanent feature to EVE Online. Very similar. Let's see here. Your whole group will need to be in a fleet together. Ooh, that's kind of a barrier. So you will need to be in a fleet. You will need to be somewhat organized to go in there. I would have honestly hoped for that I could say, I want to join the 2 versus 2. I'm currently in my Vexor and I'm ready. And if there's other players that, you know, want to try this as well, just get 4 individuals, make 2 versus 2 fleet and go in there as well. I would have loved to see that, but apparently right now, no, you need the organization. Well, I'm sure that I could do some with my brother or some with you guys, perhaps. Sounds like it's accessible enough for that. And we'll be able to cancel. Oh, so let's see here. The player with the filament activates it and their fleet will enter the queue for the Proving Grounds event. While the group is in the queue, they will remain outside Abyssal Dead Space and will be able to cancel the match and have their filament returned if they choose to do so. Okay, I would have just had it destroyed, to be honest. Just make it cost something to queue up and then to mess with the system. But that is fine. Once the Proving Grounds find a random opposing team, both teams will be transported through the trace directly into the Abyssal Proving Grounds arena. Kind of course, what we expected, how that would work. No real info on how it will find an opponent, so that could be kind of dangerous. And And then of course we have the new arenas that look pretty interesting, and then the matches. Now this might be really interesting and something to look through, so let's read that out. All the way through, I think the new Proving Ground battles will last a maximum of 15 minutes, with the resistances of all ships being reduced around the 8-minute mark. So basically, there's not gonna be endless stalemates or out-repping the damage all the time. That's interesting. The combat field is contained with a bubble of safe space, and exiting the boundary will result in progressive damage to your ship. The match ends when the only ships other than capsules left on the field belong to a single team, or when the 15-minute match timer completes. Whichever comes first, the winning team can choose whether to show mercy and allow the losing capsuleers to escape with their bots. Okay, interesting. You can be honorable, you can be merciful and let people keep their implants, or you can say, nope, you're going home with the Bot Express. That's pretty cool, actually. Just that is a nice perk, I think, and could be could serve for a little bit of drama. If the timer runs out before one team has succeeded, the bubble of safe space within the abyss will collapse, destroying all ships and capsules from every team and rendering the match a draw. So a draw is actually the most expensive thing that you can imagine in these Proving Grounds. Once the team has been crowned the winner, a Triglavian cache will explode within the arena, allowing the victors to collect their spoils. Loot that will often include Triglavian survey data and more filaments. An origin gate will also activate, allowing surviving players to return back to the same location in normal space. And here we get some more skins. And then we've got the brackets or something. Individual results in each limited time Proving Filament event can be tracked through a new window that will be accessible also to the Neocom. Displaying top 100 capsulers by total number of wins in the particular event. At the end of each event, a set of prizes will be distributed to accounts that reach this top 100. Okay, interesting. That's definitely some motivation. And then looking to the future, I only skimmed this bit, but yeah, they understand that this is going to be controversial for some people. They do want to have all the feedback possible. Structure PvP raised question for who missed the old annual Alliance tournament. So on this one, nothing definitive, but basically we could see they're hoping that if this proves to be successful, they can then use part of this technology basically to perhaps at some point bring back something like an Alliance tournament, or perhaps even allow for player created tournaments in the game. I think the potential is there. Coming to Singularity as well, so we're definitely gonna take a look at that, and then there should be a mass test too. So very interesting. I think definitely something that I'm gonna give a try on, and I'll already immediately give my feedback. Yeah, fittings, drugs, things like that are all a very big part of that. So if there's no matchmaking, we could see some unfairness. Personally, what I would like to see is not just a ship type restriction, but if it's possible, also like a budget restriction. Let's say you have take one frigates and your budget is 10 million ISK. So you could go nuts and put everything into your guns, or you could go nuts and put everything into your mid slots or your low slots. But the estimated value cannot exceed of your entire ship, including what you have in the cargo, so your drugs and things like that as well, cannot exceed that 10 million, and then you can go up to 50, 100, and then eventually you can go with the any budget goes part as well. I think that if your worry is about like completely one-sided battles, which I think some people will definitely experience again and again and again, especially as alpha clones, then something like that would probably be the best option in my personal opinion. You could also have restrictions on fittings, for instance, no faction pieces, only take one, stuff like that. But having a budget limitation, I think could be very, very interesting. And then on this feature in general, well, as you guys know, I'm a solo playing Care Bear, so I've never really engaged a lot in PvP. In fact, the closest that I've been to most PvP is that I go out somewhere in a cloaky ship, witness most of it, and then sometimes I'm in a stealth bomber and I take a couple of pot shots at someone that's already dying. But more than that, really not. And so this is something that I feel would take away that barrier of I don't really know what I'm doing. 99% of the time, if I would go out somewhere solo in low sec, in null sec, I'm just gonna get smashed by a big fleet anyways. I know that, so why the hell would I even bother? Here, it already feels like something that is a lot more accessible, and I'm definitely planning to give it a try. Not necessarily all of them. I mean, 5 versus 5 organized might already feel like a step too much for someone like me, but that's fine. Then I'll do something else, and I'll maybe try to prepare some ships for the next event. Another thing that I find very interesting is that CCP is apparently trying this out in a very limited and very controlled way. What I mean by that is limited time, one event at a time only, apparently. And so I do think that that's a smart plan, because if you want to be engaged in this, you have basically one option. It is going to be 2 versus 2 Tech 1 cruisers. This is your choice. These are your ships, and during these days, these first 10 days here, coming mid-July already, in just a couple of weeks, that's how you engage in this new feature. This will allow for, number one, lots of matches to happen. I think players should find those pretty damn quickly. Because of that, glaring problems will be found very quickly, and then they'll just move on to the next one, and this gives CCP the time to basically develop the whole feature, see what's popular, see what's accessible, see where the problems are before they, I think the long-term plan would be eventually decide that, okay, you know what, Tech 1 ships 1 versus 1 is something that players could run just almost indefinitely. Let's give them that. This is the first filament that you guys get, perhaps even with a budget restriction or something like that. But that is obviously something for the longer term, not for right now. Right now it's very small scale, I'm gonna call it, very controlled, and does feel like testing the waters rather than coming out with this is our new Jesus feature, which I personally think is pretty damn cool. This also might have an impact on the markets. I mean, they're definitely here announcing, hey, these 10 days expect lots of omens, caracal, thorax, stabbers, vexor, things like that to be needed, so better get your production ready. You might get a good price for that. And then here at the end of July, expect destroyers to make a pretty massive comeback all of a sudden, because 5 versus 5 free for all, that should be a lot of destruction in the destroyer market. So that might feel like a little bit unfair, but I think it's very cool, and I'll definitely try to engage with this one as it's being rolled out, give as much feedback as possible, but I think this is a smart way to do it. This doesn't feel like something that'll just be thrown in and abandoned, but rather something like, this is our idea. I think everyone kind of sees where this is going what this is going for, but they're giving themselves every single chance to try out what works best for the players, what's most popular and accessible, to just make this as good as possible. So I'm looking forward to all of this on CC, to the mass tests, and then to eventually perhaps even try some of this myself. It'll be mostly for fun. I don't expect to be able to climb into that top 100 at all, but yeah, all right. I'd call this a nuke. Instanced PvP coming into EVE Online. Definitely pretty damn interesting. Let me know in the comments if you plan to engage with this, and of course your thoughts on this feature as well. But I myself kind of saw it coming eventually. It's just coming quite a bit sooner than expected, and then again it's also coming in a format, as I've said, that feels a little bit more limited than what I had envisioned already. So we'll see how it works out. For now, that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.